Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for this this invitation, which gave me great opportunity to better know the Ubuntu network, which I came across in the last few weeks, and I think it's I'm very happy to be here and to start possibly a valuable collaboration in the future. I'm really sorry for not being able to attend this morning discussions, which I presume they were very exciting and stimulating, and I heard something about that in the breakout room I just attended right now. So let me share my screen. Okay, my PowerPoint. Okay, can you see it? Yeah.
We can see. Thanks, Massimiliano.
Okay, so, well, conceptualizing global citizenship education in teacher education. Well, this is a very tough job, but this is what I was asked to do today. So to try to provide this overlook on global citizenship education, I'll try to provide, first of all, some insight, starting from definition. Then I will briefly locate global citizenship education in relation to other terms used in the practice. Then I'll say something about how global citizenship education has emerged, has gained prominence in international policy over the last decade. But there are diverse and sometimes contrasting reasons underpinning this contested notion and its success, I would say. And then I'll conclude with a few observations on global citizenship education, teacher education, based on a comparative research I've recently conducted in 4 European countries. But before doing this, let me please, first of all, say something very briefly on what Angel is, because I'm the Angel coordinator. As I said, Angel is the academic network of global education and learning, which is the first network among scholars and researchers aimed to creating links and ties among global education and learning researchers across Europe initially, and then I would say now globally. It has been established for 3.5 years ago, 2017, in close cooperation between the Global Education Network of Europe, GENE, and the Development Education Research Center at the UCL Institute of Education. And now is becoming, I would say, a multi-hub center with several centers, I would say, in Europe. Now, in less than 4 years, we now have more than 600 members for more than 60 countries. Yes, I would say, as I said, the main goal is to strengthen the links and connections among researchers in the field of global education and learning. And the second main goal is to try to bridge the gap between researchers and policymakers, because Global Education Network of Europe, GENE, is essentially a network of policymakers, representatives of Ministry of Education and Foreign Affairs in different European countries. Angel is aiming at doing creating a community. So we organize every other year an international conference. The other year we organize an early career research conference, because we have a special aim in training the early career researchers. And then we publish many publications on these topics. A multilingual digest every year, and then policy briefings aimed at policymakers. If you want to find out any other information and become members of Angel, which is free, please just go to www.angelnetwork.net. So this was just for introducing myself as coordinator of this network, and I'm happy to provide any further information if you want to. So let's start with this definition. This definition is taken from the standards for the initial teacher education, which I think, if I'm not wrong, this is at the core of today assembly. So this definition, in looking at this definition is based on essentially on the SDG target 4.7. The second part is the text of the target 4.7 of the SDGs. And the first part is based on the UNESCO, mostly inspired by the UNESCO approach taken from the document of UNESCO in 2014. This definition, which I like it in general, but is a very all-encompassing and broad definition, and it also quite vague, I would say, because to define global citizenship education, well, overall, I would say that defining global citizenship education is not only a very complex effort, but is perhaps one of the activities which is at the core of global citizenship education as such. Conceptualizing global citizenship education and defining it is a key feature, as I would say, a sort of a benchmark of every scholar in global citizenship education, which regularly start his or her own discussion with a conceptualization. Well, following the UNESCO approach, first of all, I would claim that following the UNESCO approach and this definition, more than a new discipline or school subject, to me, global citizenship education is a new educational perspective, an ethos, making sense and framing theoretically and methodologically different types of knowledge, abilities, and values. More precisely, among different interpretations and ideas underpinning global citizenship education, I personally embrace a non-neutral global social justice framework, which I elaborated with my colleague Carlos Alberto Torres at the UCLA in California, which consider global citizenship education not only a new educational content, as a mere extension of citizenship concept, for example, that from the national to the global level, but a new perspective that allowed policymakers and practitioners to reconceptualize old issues within a new educational stance. This framework encompasses the individual global-mindedness, subjective responsibilities, and behavior toward social and environmental sphere, combining these two different and sometimes contrasting spheres in the educational field. As graphically illustrated in this figure, global citizenship education can be regarded as an ethos that should be rooted in individual choices and responsibility for the social community and the natural environment in form of consciousness, attitude, behavior, but also political commitment. In this framework, key educational issues are such as interculturality, sustainability, and social justice make a kind of a new sense in a global and holistic way. Well, the chaos of terms. As you can see in this slide, which is trying to summarizing two analyses, the different research carried out by Jean and Concord Europe on the use of various terms. There are a number of terms used to define similar issues. And I also carried out a research recently, and based on my own research a few years ago, emerged that there are national traditions in using different terms to mean similar topics. For example, global learning is mostly used as umbrella term in England, Germany, Austria, Bulgaria, Latvia, among others. While global education is used at a European level, especially in the Council of Europe, together with more recently in the European Commission, the development education and awareness raising term. Our research, similarly to other research, show that there is a different, I would say, in the political jargon used by different ministries involved in global citizenship education promotion. Namely the Minister of Education on the one hand, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, on the other hand. But despite a number of concepts being used, such as global education, development education, global learning, etc., I personally do not pay too much attention to which term is used to emphasize the global dimension in education. I'm aware, however, that frequent conceptual and or nominal changes are perceived by practitioners, and not by scholars, but by practitioners, and in particular by NGOs practitioners, as particularly disturbing and confusing. So while as researchers and scholars, we somehow like to play out with terms and concepts, at the practical level, the practitioners pay the cost of this theoretical game we are playing. So therefore, if I have to choose, I would prefer the term global citizenship education, first of all, because it has been strongly endorsed by United Nations through especially the education activities, and it explicitly mentioned in the SDGs target 4.7, as we see in the definition we started. Moreover, I must admit that I also like the very idea of focusing on citizenship, a condition that beyond nation state sounds like a contradiction in political or juridical terms, but in education, it is a meaningful notion, global citizenship. A nonsense, a political nonsense, but very meaningful in education. It can be relevant in educational terms to combine citizenship responsibilities, the entitlement of rights, and the ability to exercise them in the society. So that's a very powerful idea in educational terms. To me, global citizenship education and development education are synonyms. And this is also demonstrated by my own academic biography, because in Italy, I'm the director of a Global Citizenship Education Research Center at the University of Bologna, while in the UK, I'm co-director of a Development Education Research Center in UCL Institute of Education. And in both places, I'm pursuing the same research agenda and I'm teaching the same goals. I'm doing more or less the same things with under two different umbrella terms. But while there's no conceptual, to me, difference between development education and global citizenship education, this development education is the most widely used term in the political discourses in many parts of Europe, including Ireland, if I'm not mistaken, especially for the foreign affairs or Irish aid tradition. In the scholarly discourse, however, as this slide shows, it seemed that in recent years, global citizenship education has taken over development education. This slide is comparing global citizenship education and development education article in the Scopus database in the last 10 years, 2008, 2018. So there's been a little bit more. So it seems that in the scholarly discourse, global citizenship education is more, I would say, fashionable than the development education. In Europe, the tradition in Europe, the European context in particular, global citizenship education has had the merit recently in the last decade, the merit of merging several themes under the same umbrella term, encompassing several topics, such as development education, as I mentioned, environmental education, and citizenship education. So the traditions related to these three main streams are combined within the global citizenship education umbrella. But since I do not like rigid definitions, as I mentioned above, and I consider global citizenship education an umbrella term embracing several issues and approaches. I'm not very interested in tracing clear boundaries between similar concepts. I'm very inclusive, and I tend to see similarities rather than differences in those concepts. Well, in sum, I would endorse the UNESCO approach by using a similar definition taken from the same document back on 2014, where the definition of the teacher education standards has been taken. In this UNESCO approach, I particularly like the holistic approach that UNESCO strongly support, considering global citizenship education a framing paradigm capable to combine various adjectival educations, which are traditionally taken separately, and provide a new meaning to a well-established educational issues and pedagogical approaches. So I think that is the most important, the most powerful element of a holistic idea of global citizenship education. But how global citizenship education has emerged and gained prominence globally and in Europe in particular. This is also important in the last decade. In the last decade, many supranational and national bodies started disseminating this approach across the globe. UNESCO in particular plays a major role in disseminating ideas and acting for global citizenship education implementation in national school systems. Then what has been called a global turn in education started influencing education policy, school practice, and academic debate to integrate global citizenship education in school curriculum in national countries. However, it must be observed that such a global sensitivity can be traced back even earlier. The history of global dimension in education can be traced over decades. In Europe, in particular, the global citizenship education antecedent global education officially originated back in 1997 with the Global Education Charter adopted by the Council of Europe in 1997. Afterward, the Maastricht Declaration, embraced in 2002 by the Council of Europe, represents a comprehensive framework for a European strategy of global education, trying to be as much as inclusive as possible to encompass different issues and different political agendas, similarly to the holistic UNESCO approach of global citizenship education. More recently, a milestone for global citizenship education dissemination has been its introduction in the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, in particularly in the explicit mention in the goal 4.7. This also has been quoted in the definition we started from the teacher education standards. This has had a huge impact on the political agenda and is having a huge impact on the political agenda by encouraging countries to integrate this subject into school and, I would say, into teacher education, which is considered one of the priority in this target assessment. But despite the increasing political prominence of GCED, widely promoted by supranational political bodies, there are different and sometimes contrasting reasons underpinning this global turn in education. And global citizenship education remains an highly contested notion. There are several and competing approaches to global citizenship education that can be located, to me, in a sort of continuum between two poles: market-oriented for one side versus global social justice to the other side. But there are more nuanced positions in between. Diverse view in framing global citizenship education show that it is open to many different conceptual political, and educational interpretations addressing different goals rooted in contrasting vision and political assumptions. On the one hand, supranational agencies are endorsing global citizenship education in the framework of a neoliberal economic knowledge discourse. This approach is intended to promote a new type of entrepreneurial citizens that navigate in an increasingly interconnected global community. In this vein, global citizenship education aims at educating people or global elite for global free market, with an emphasis on flexibility, free market thinking, and belief in technological process. This is on the one hand. On the other hand, a more critical vision of global citizenship education emphasizes equality and social justice as fundamental educational goals. Here, scholars are advocating for a transformational global social justice framework, including myself, to provide a decolonial and anti-colonial lenses on the process, objectives, and aims of global citizenship education. For example, Vanessa Andreotti compares and contrasts in a well-known work on contrasting soft and critical global citizenship in terms of basic assumption and implication for citizenship education, understanding, and acting. She claims that due to the lack of critical analysis of power relation and global inequality, global citizenship education often results in educational practice that can unintentionally or intentionally reproduce and reinforce an ethnocentric and ahistorical paternalistic approach. And this is a real risk of a naive and superficial internationalism, sometimes used behind the idea of global citizenship. In sum, such diverse view in framing global citizenship education show that this concept is open to different conceptual, political, and educational interpretations. Hence, in putting global citizenship into practice, it's important to bear in mind that different goals are rooted in contrasting visions and in political assumptions. Because we sometimes, too often, we refer to different underpinning by using the same words, the same terms, and apparently we reach an agreement, but it's only a superficial and a nominal agreement, while there are strong, deep differences in political assumptions and theoretical assumptions. If I have, again, a couple of minutes, I'd like to conclude my short summary, but it's very short summary, with few highlights in global citizenship education in teacher education, which is crucial for implementing global citizenship education in the school curriculum and to promote a real change and large-scale school reform. In particular, my comparative research on teacher education in 4 European countries, which I carried out in with a European team, and I wrote with a colleague working in Ireland, show that teachers play a major role in global citizenship education, global citizenship education implementation, and teacher education is strategic field for policy enactment. The pioneering programs explored, they were mostly in-service teacher education programs, demonstrated that collaboration between multiple actors is critical for the success of teacher education programs and the achievement of teacher agency. In fact, research confirmed that educating teachers in global citizenship rests primarily on achieving teachers' agency and empowering teachers as agents of change. A value-based approach, the value-based pedagogical approach, usually run by NGOs, is a major driver in this process and to engage teachers in the promotion of school change. NGO-driven value-based teacher education is highly valuable in developing transformative processes, engaging teachers to achieve positive agency towards school change. In sum, a value-based transformative teacher education can be regarded not only as a tool to equip teachers with knowledge, skills, and abilities required to improve students' learning, but also as a political apparatus to curriculum change. And this is demonstrated not only by our own research, but also similar research carried out in Finland, where a large-scale school reform in Finland to include to integrate the global citizenship education in their curriculum demonstrated that promoting teacher agency was crucial and critical for make this process more effective. Okay, so I think time is over, and I really hope that this very quick overview could have provided some, well, I would say some food for thought and stimulate further discussion in this assembly.